except one more time. Just one more time and then I'll be done, I promise. Anyway, my name is Larry Mido. I'm an international correspondent at CNN. I'm excited to lead this conversation leading into the presidential panel. And I'm going to be in conversation with Alhaji Aliko Dangote, founder, chairman, and CEO of the Dangote Group. Please join me on stage. And also, the middle. And also joining me on stage, please give a big welcome back to Kigali, Mr. Patrick Pouyanné, Chairman and CEO of Total Energy. All right, this is working. Let's make sure your microphones are working, gentlemen. Fantastic. Welcome to Kigali, both of you.
Thank you.
Thank you. Thank you for welcoming us here.
Full house here. I want to begin with, we're all here at the Africa CEO Forum. We've had 2 days of great conversation. So the most important thing for both of you, starting with you, Mr. Pouyanné, Total Energy is in more than 30 countries across the continent, upstream and downstream. What are you excited about in Africa right now?
I know Africa for us is a part of our history. We are celebrating our 100-year anniversary. We have not been there for 100 years, but it's really one of the strong anchors of the company. And we're excited because first, the continent has a growing population, growing market, which is good. And of course, it's a continent full of natural resources, not only traditionally oil and gas, but it's also for us, as we have moved from Total to Total Energies, a very good earth to deploy our multi-energy strategy, which is also investing in renewables. And by the way, it's making somewhere circling the loop, because historically we were producing oil and gas to export the energy. Now, because of electricity, because we are in fact an electricity producer, we produce electricity and we deploy also some LPG investments in the continent for the population in the continent. So this multi-energy strategy for me is reconciling the oil and gas resource for export, but giving revenues, but also for the people of the continent. And I remind you that Total Energy is the only big major company which has kept all its retail network. We have 4,800 stations in 45 countries. So for us, it's part of, I would say, Africa is part of the family of Total Energies.
All right, and Alhaji, you have operations across more than a dozen countries. What are you most excited about on the continent right now?
Well, thank you very much for inviting me to the Africa CEO conference this year. And I must thank His Excellency for inviting me personally, to be here, and that's why I'm here. Well, I'm very, very excited because the growth going forward, the future is Africa. We have whatever it takes to make Africa great. And I think that is why I'm not only putting in my own money, I'm putting my soul and life in Africa to make Africa great. Like what I keep saying, nothing is impossible in Africa. Africa is like a scratch card. Unless you scratch it, you know what number it is, or you won't be able to use it. So that is why, for some of us, despite the boom of the capital market of the US, Google, Microsoft, and the rest, we didn't really participate. We took all our money and invested. In the last 7 years, we have invested more than $25 billion in terms of making Africa self-sufficient in fertilizer, in petrochemicals, in refined products, and also continue with the expansion of our cement business. So what we have right now, we also say, okay, fine, is it possible for an African company to grow this big and we had this dream just about 5 years ago, and we say, okay, we want to move from 5 billion revenue to 30 billion revenue. Is it possible? And we made it happen. It's possible now, we've done it, and we have actually finished our own refinery. Our refinery is quite big. It is something that we believe Africa needs, because we now looked at it and said, okay, fine. In Africa, do we really refine the oil we consume? Do we really refine the oil we produce? The answer is no. And you look for the entire continent, there are only 2 countries that don't import petroleum product, which is a tragedy. I mean, only Morocco, not only Algeria and Libya, but the rest are all importers. So we need to really change by making sure that, yes, we just don't go and produce raw material, we should produce finished products and create jobs. One of the things that we need to know as also Africans is that, yes, we produce raw materials, we export them. When you export raw materials and somebody now keep importing things into your continent and be dumping goods, what you are importing poverty and exporting jobs out. So we have to change the narrative.
You've spent, thank you. You mentioned investing $25 billion in the last few years. 20 billion of that went into just this refinery, which is the largest on the continent. It opened a year ago. What is the impact so far of that having come on stream?
There is quite of impact. We just commissioned in February. We've started now, we're producing jet fuel, we're producing gasoline, diesel. By next month, we'll be producing gasoline. But what that will do is that it will be able to take most of the African crudes that are being produced and also be able to supply not only Nigeria. Nigeria, our capacity is too big for Nigeria, but it will be able to supply in West Africa, Central Africa, and also South Africa. We have 650,000 metric tons of, 650,000 barrels per day. We have 1 million tons of polypropylene. We have 590,000 carbon black, raw materials for, making ink, dyes, and co. And then we are expanding more. This is the first phase. We're actually going now to the next phase, which will start early next year.
All right. And an investment like this, Mr. Puyane, is also significant for your business across the continent, because often we don't value add the crude we produce here. We have to then re-import it. The fuel we buy from your stations across the continent doesn't come from here.
Yeah. No, but thanks to this event, and thank you to Mr. Kagame who invited me, we made this morning the first deal between both of us. So
you made the first deal with the Dangote refinery.
I can tell you. We met here, and because of the refinery, we said together, okay, look, we are a big crude producer in Nigeria, but also in other countries, and we are also a big off-taker of products for the continent, so we should find a way to work a deal. So the 2 CEOs met with our head of trading, and we find a way to convince them to make a deal. So I think it's giving, it's a stone, an important stone to develop a business. When you have this type of mammoth investments, you create certainly an activity like what we are doing, what we will do, what we are doing in Uganda by producing this oil onshore Uganda. I know there's a lot of debate, but I can tell you it will be a source of developing industries around this production of oil, like what we will do in Mozambique. When we will develop this project in Mozambique, it will be also a source, not only for exporting energy, but by the way, we plan to take domestic gas to Maputo to produce electricity. So all that, this is the way we should think to that. It's not only to export for us, but to add value in the continent, and then you will deploy more activity, not only during the project times, but also, I would say, on a permanent basis. That I think so. I could only admire. I think many people, honestly, I was part of them, adapt that this refinery would never be into production. It is a case, so congratulations to Aliko. I think it's, you need leaders with a vision, and I think Aliko has a vision, so I'm happy to have met him today and to engage into a new business relationships.
There are two things, Mr. Puyane, you mentioned that I want to follow up on. One, you also met today with President Kagame and President Nyusi of Mozambique. I wonder if there's any news you have to share about your LNG project in Mozambique, which has been under force majeure since 2021, April.
We are working on it. And thank you to Jeanne, and thank you to Jeanne Afrique to have met. Allow me to have a super useful day. First Aliko, then President Nyusi, then President Dangote. I will come back to this type of event, you know, with the number of business I have in Africa. No, honestly, we are all working hard. I can tell you, contractors aligned, everybody is working hard. It's a project of a huge size. So, you know, unfortunately, we were obliged to stop it, but we intend, clearly, my objective is to resume it. And I'm working hard. I can tell you it's on the top of my agenda to resume it, and we'll do it in the best possible conditions for everybody, of course, but security first, but it's a matter of really that's high on our agenda.
You also mentioned the East African crude oil pipeline, which will run from Uganda's Lake Albert region all the way to the port of Tanga in Tanzania. There's been a lot of pushback on that from environmental groups, from some local communities. In fact, one campaign has called it that it will devastate communities, it will endanger wildlife, and it will cook the planet. And they call it economically irresponsible. What's your response to that?
Yeah, but you know, you are back to many arguments. First, fundamentally, and you mix different ideas. Do we need oil and gas today in the planet? I've made a long demonstration recently at the French Parliament. Just to tell you, today, the reality of our energy, today, the system is that it works with 80% of fossil fuels. 30% of oil, 20% of gas, 30% of coal. When I entered into this industry 25 years ago, it was 82%. You tell me nothing has moved. No, a lot of things have moved, but in the meantime, the population of the world has grown by 30%. So to think that we can just change from in a night this system of the world, it will not happen. So of course we have to invest heavily in what I call the system B, which is a low carbon system, to invest heavily in renewables, in biofuels, all these new energies. But you know, in 23, all the investments we have done on a worldwide basis, almost more than 500 gigawatts of renewables, which is huge, only absorb 40% of the additional increase of demand in the year. And there is a phenomenon, which is that if you don't invest in the oil fields, in new oil fields, every year, the production of oil, existing oil fields declined by 4% per year, natural decline. So if we don't invest in new oil fields, I will tell you what will happen. Today you complain about the oil price, you will not complain. You will shout, you will cry, you will accuse us to have organized a scarcity. So that's just a natural, that's the reality. The demand continues to grow. Of course, it does not mean that we should not do it, but today it's an and equation. We must continue to invest in oil and gas, and we must double, triple the efforts in this renewable system. But as long as you did not build a full system, you know, you cannot starve people for energy. I say that in Africa, which is difficult because today you have quite a number of Africans who do not have access to energy. But I can tell you, if you notice in 22 and 23, the reaction in Europe, when they were afraid to not have enough energy for their winter because of Russian gas, nobody could accept that. So I think the reality is this one. So this oil of Angola, of Uganda, sorry, it's useful. When you ask other questions, are we such a terrible company we don't respect human rights? I can tell you it's absolutely the contrary of all values of the company. And I have some figures. Of course, it's an exceptional project because we have decided to build a 1,400 kilometer pipeline, which is buried, not on the ground. And I can tell you this pipeline does not go through natural preserved areas, special areas. Yes, there were 19,000 families which were impacted. 800 of them we must have built a house. 98% of these people are today in their new house. And I can tell you 97% are very happy. Then, of course, we had a huge work to be done to, I would say, reimburse the other families which we bought some land. 99% of them have been paid, and we have very little. We have 30 cases out of 19,000, which today are still in the courts, which honestly, so we have done the best possible. It's a huge project, but it's happened, by the way, let's be clear. We are drilling, we are building, and so by end 25, beginning 26, this will be a reality. And I think, honestly, in this debate, most of the critics were coming from Western NGOs. When we are in a company, we consider that our duty is to work for the local, for the country, for Uganda. I'm not there to give lessons to Uganda. I'm there to, Uganda has given us, has trusted us to develop their resource. Right. We must do it in the best possible way. And, you know, we are a 100-year company, deeply rooted in Africa. And I can accept a lot of things, but criticizing us that we don't respect human rights is completely wrong. So that's the reality. Our world is more complex today than before. I don't tell you that we were perfect. It's, again, a lot of people were impacted, it's true. Right. And we are more accustomed to develop offshore production. But this project, again, will be a real source of wealth for Uganda, for Tanzania, and for the East Africa in a whole.
All right. I want to talk about cement in a moment, but I just want to go back to the refinery. And speaking of opposition, how much pushback, how much opposition did you face in building a refinery this big from scratch?
Well, I don't know where to start from, but the pushback was very, very heavy, was very, very impactful, because there are people who have actually been used to just making money trading without refining. And, you know, to get people who are committed to Africa, like Patrick Pionnier, like, you know, he's here, not because he's here. If it's not true, I wouldn't say it, but somebody like Patrick believes in investing in Africa. Because a lot of the companies that are today are operating, they're actually not investing. And some of the, issues of stopping that investment is going to impact us, not today, going forward in the future, which means our oil production will continue to go down. Because in oil, unless you keep investing, your production will go down. So that is the issue. And, you know, people talk about, yes, you know, all these vehicles, EVs. Yes, it's true. Today, the production of vehicles in the world is about 100 million. If you take even 25 million vehicles to produce, you need over 6 million tons of lithium and other copper and other things, which today we're at a capacity of about 1 million. So I don't know when this thing is going to replace the fossil fuel. For some of us, we believe that, okay, fine, even if there will be a reduction. I mean, you can see, of recent, you've seen Hertz rental car. They dropped all their EVs, and they've gone back to gasoline. We should ask them why. What was the reason that they did that? It's not that I don't I believe in it, but it will take time. It's not going to happen overnight. It's going to take time. But with us, we face the most challenging thing in terms of building this refinery. First of all, we couldn't find what you call an EPC contractor. That is engineering, procurement, and construction. The conditions that they were giving us were no conditions that we could actually take. The pricing that they were giving us wasn't a condition that we could actually even afford. So we, as Dangote, got so upset, and we set up our own internal team to now do the entire project. People will think that, yes, refinery, okay. It's not a common refinery that were built. Our refinery is 650,000 barrels. Every single equipment that we have in the refinery was never ever designed or built because of the size. Smaller size have been done. Maximum refinery, I think it's about 420,000 barrels. We are the only ones, first in the world, to do 650,000, inclusive of petrochemicals. And we are the EPC contractors. So that's why today, if you go to our yard, you see that we have almost 340 cranes, 40, the equipment that we have, construction equipment that we have is much more than the entire construction equipment of West Africa. Entire. We have to do that. We have to build a port to be able to receive some of the equipment because we had some 2 or 3 pieces that are 3,000 tons, one piece. So we have to build special ports to be able to receive those, equipment. Challenging times, we had to, do sand filling of 65 million tons of sand to bring up the level of this. So we face so many issues by running so much of infrastructure, which was zero in Nigeria. We had no infrastructure. So we had to build all this infrastructure to be able to build. And the major burden on us was that, look, there is no room for failure because we were the EPC contractors. 90% of people never ever believed that we'll be able to deliver. But, we've been able to deliver for now.
That's incredible. You talked about the capacity is greater than what Nigeria can take in. You can export to West Africa, the rest of the region. But the first step is, when will Nigeria become fully self-sufficient? Do you think that you don't have to import oil? Yeah. Do you have a projection?
Well, right now, Nigeria have no cost to import anything apart from gasoline. By sometime in June, next month, within the next 4 or 5 weeks, Nigeria shouldn't import anything like gasoline, not 1 drop of liter. And when you look at it, I will share a publication of 31st of March, 1975, which was now almost 50 years ago. Nigeria, we were working on removing queues of petroleum, supply. So we've been trying all along, and we've been having issues. But right now, this issue has been addressed not only for Nigeria, for even our neighboring countries. We have enough gasoline to give to at least the entire West Africa. We have enough diesel to give to West Africa, Central Africa. We have enough aviation fuel to give to the entire continent and also export some to Brazil and Mexico. So what we have actually done is not...
I apologize to interrupt you, sir. I just want to make sure that we can give a big welcome. Please stand and welcome His Excellency, President William Ruto of Kenya. Please sit.
Thank you.
Please go ahead.
Marabou, what we're doing, I think we as an African company, and we're proudly African, is to see what other... It's not only about petroleum products. Today, our polypropylene and our polyethylene will meet the entire demand of Africa today. We're doing, we're doing base oil, which is to do like engine oil. We're doing linear benzene, which is raw material to produce LAB, which is raw material to produce detergent. We have 1.4 billion people population. Nobody is producing that in Africa. So all our detergents are imported, the raw material. We are producing that raw material to make Africa self-sufficient. And as I said, give us 3, maximum 4 years, Africa will not, and I repeat, and you can challenge me, will not import any more fertilizer from anywhere. We'll make Africa self-sufficient in both potash, phosphate. Even if you don't have enough, there is a lot in Morocco. But we're also looking at the opportunities. Our urea, we're at 3 million tons. In the next 20 months, we will be at 6 million tons of urea, which is, I think, the entire capacity of Egypt. We're getting there, and I'm sure we'll make everybody proud.
Fantastic. Mr. Puyane, we've got our leaders here from at least 3 African presidents. If you're being entirely honest, what's the most difficult bit about doing business here on the continent? Multiple geographies, multiple regulations, multiple taxes.
Yeah, but you know, in our business, we have to be local. Each country has its policy. I would say for Africa, what are the challenges, if I'm honest? First, security, but we are able to deal with it. So I would say we are accustomed in the Niger Delta to deal with it. So, of course, it requires some specific things, because for a CEO like me, of course, security of my people is of primary importance, you know, so I have to, that's almost, but I would say that's the point. Then, of course, then it's finding talents in the continent. You have some countries like Nigeria, like Rwanda, where we can find talents quite easily. Some of us have a difficulty of education. So I would say, and we can contribute to you to that as well by training people. It's part of what we bring. But I think that's the second point on which we need to invest collectively. And then sometimes, you know, you have a sort of, it's life. So you love to debate. You love to open topics without closing them. So you know, when in Nigeria, for example, we have been, since I am in the business, there is always a new legislation in Nigeria about a new petroleum law. So when you have so in France we are accustomed, but we don't have oil and gas. In Nigeria, you know, when you have a permanent debate, and it's difficult for investors who look for the long term to know where we go. And in fact, it has been bad, to be honest, because reality, unfortunately, I think that Niger Delta is the most prolific part of West Africa. But when you look what happened, because of this debate, there was not a single exploration well in Nigeria for 12 years. Last project we've done it was Egina in 2014. So it's time now, sometimes, to good to have debate, but then to settle the debate, and then to put a framework on the table so that the investor can trust. And so I'm working hard, and I visited President Tinubu. I will come back again tomorrow to tell him, okay, look, we fixed the gas, no, we need to fix the water. So that's important, to find the signal. There are countries which perfectly have integrate that. Angola, I will go to Angola and announce a very large project, $6 billion, beginning of the week, because there the framework is stable. So we know where we go. Mozambique, stable. Uganda, we had some debates in Uganda, which have been part of the problem. So I think that's important, stability. Then I would say today, when I'm looking to our multi-energy strategy, we want to invest in electricity, which is another electric energy. It's more local. And what we face today, honestly, is a difficulty to secure the payments for electricity. I know it's a topic. The governance of electricity in the continent is less clear than in oil and gas. And I think we need to make an effort. And everybody thinks that renewables is good for Africa because you have sun, you have wind, etc. But in fact, we need to put some right framework. And know when I'm attending at the AEA against forum to speak about Africa, I tell them, look, what we need today is not words. We need actions from the World Bank or this institution to put a guarantee scheme in place. We just want to guarantee to secure. I don't think we will use it, but when you invest in electricity, it's a local energy, you need to find a way to secure it. It's of primary importance. So I think we need to put some goodwill together to find the right framework to let this electricity business really growing in Africa, because without it, it's difficult to make industries, it's difficult for people to I would say, to have a better way of life, elevate standard of life. So the continent is plenty of resource, for sure, and we love it. I think it's part, and honestly, even if sometimes it's a little the mess, we love it. Right. Because the French people find a way to navigate, you know, so we are good at that. And I think we find ways to find a deal with Aliko. So since I found a way with Aliko, I can deal with many people in Africa.
Right.
So, you know.
Mr. Puyane, I appreciate how candid you have been on the panel. Mr. Dangote, jump in.
Yeah, let me jump in. Well, Patrick, I don't know whether that is a compliment or is a...
You will know me, it's always double language.
Okay, well, you're right. But I think, just to add, in Nigeria, I think the current government, they've done quite a lot, like what you said, in electricity tariff. The issue is about payment. And then they have also done quite a lot in terms of the PIA, which is Petroleum Industry Act. It's true, it might not be 100% perfect, but it's a start. And I'm sure the government is always willing to, and that is why we have somebody like you as the head of Total still investing. You are back to investment. Apart from this, the deal that we just closed this morning, you've closed even one last week on gas. Okay, even us, we have closed deals with Shell on gas because it makes sense. But I think the biggest challenge that we have as entrepreneurs in Africa is the inconsistencies in policies. One now you say, okay, yes, today we are going to drive left hand, or you say, okay, fine. Goalpost is here, just in front of you. When you are about to score the goal, then the government will remind you, no, the goalpost has been changed to behind you. So, so these are the main issues that are actually, they can bankrupt anybody. So I think we need to really look at it that, look, our own political leaders, what you need to understand is that it's a win-win. It's like what they say, you cannot clap with one hand, you clap with two hands. Now, I was telling somebody was talking about, you people are making too much money in cement, blah, blah, blah. Then later on, I reminded the person that, look, go and check our figures. For every 1 naira that I turn around, government collects 52%. So
on every single naira?
On every single naira we turn around, 52% goes to the government through various taxes. Okay, so it's not a tea party. Everybody, everybody is benefiting. And then there are quite a lot of countries, especially in East Africa, that we have helped. When we went to East Africa 10 years ago or 9 years ago, when we were building our own cement plants, we were paying $230 per ton. Okay, but after our plant, the price dropped to even as low as 65. So there are quite a lot of benefits, not only to the countries, but to also the citizens of those countries. We've created jobs. In the same Patrick is saying, yes, we lack skills. In the refinery we built, we had at a point 67,000 workers, but 35,000 workers from Nigeria have actually been trained, and I can assure you by the time we finish the project, they are better fitters, welders than the people we brought from India and other countries. Well certified.
Right. We are delaying the president. So
just one last word. In fact, I want to tell you that there are also very good examples of governance in Africa. It's here in Rwanda. You have a country which is really, for me, since I discovered it, I came first with my family to visit the country, and it was extraordinary to see how this country, without a lot of natural resource, is able, because of a vision and a clear leader, without moving the target, like you said, you managed to have an incredible development. So I think we can praise President Kagame for that.
Finally, really quickly, we talk a lot about the African Continental Free Trade Area, the ability for goods and services to move across the continent. Mr. Dangote, you have previously complained about the difficulty of traveling on a Nigerian passport across the continent. Has it become easier?
Even an hour ago, I complained to President Kagame.
At least you can come here visa-free.
No, here is the best example, but I told him that, yes, as an investor, as somebody who really wants to make Africa great, I have to now apply 35 different visas on my passport. And I told Mr. President, I said, Mr. President, I really don't have the time to go and be dropping my passports in embassies to get a visa. But you see, the most annoying thing is that, yes, if you are treating everybody the same, then I can understand. You know, I can assure you, Patrick doesn't need 35 visas. No, I said that. What I'm saying, you have...
You do not... You don't need 35 visas on a French passport compared to a Nigerian passport.
35 visas on French passport.
No.
But, you know, so which means you have a freer movement than myself in Africa.
Yeah. But you have, I remember that there are 3 countries, Uganda, Kenya, and Rwanda. You have 1 visa for the free when you are a tourist.
This is true.
I've done it. So it's good. So you can expand it. It's a question of will. But I think all what is moving on about community between Africa, it's up to the African leaders to decide, will be good for Africa.
Yes, but it will change. And what I keep saying, right now, our main job is to make sure the regional markets, they all work. Okay? Once they work, then we can now go to AFCTA. But the AFCTA also, we need to make sure that it works. We cannot have a very, very promising continent, and our intra-trade is less than 16%. Okay, so we Africans will have to do it. If we are waiting for foreigners to come and do it, both the development of Africa, it's not going to happen. So it can only happen by us Africans. We must risk our resources and make sure that we lead. Then we will have people who actually trust and believe in Africa, like Patrick, to come and help us to push to the next level.
Thank you.
Just 1 second. On a point of personal privilege, because I have the microphone, I complained recently about Nigeria requires me to pay $215 for a single entry 1-month visa every time. Biometrics is $170. And I said, as an African, as a Kenyan, this seems unfair. And they told me, actually, Kenya said it would be easier to come to Kenya, but then you introduced an electronic travel authorization, which made it harder to come to Kenya. So I was like, I don't work for government, but President Ruto is here, so he's heard.
Okay. But let me also tell you the good news. On Monday, there was cabinet meeting, and President Tinubu wasn't happy about this same visa issue. And I can assure you, in the next couple of weeks, you'll see a massive reform in terms of visas going into Nigeria.
I think on that optimistic note, thank you so much. You have been both so candid. We appreciate your time, Mr. Puyane, Mr. Dangote. Thank you for honoring us with your time. A big round of applause. And my only next job is to invite my countrymate, we call her Helen Kioko. Eleni Jokos, my colleague from CNN, to handle the presidential panel.
Thank you so much. A very good evening. Did you guys catch the joke on Helen Kioko? It's my Kenyan name. I've been baptized instead of Eleni Jokos. Lovely to see you all. My name is Eleni Jokos. I'm an anchor and correspondent at CNN. Thank you to Larry. He was fantastic. I enjoyed looking at his socks and listening to his tough questions. And of course, the illuminating answers by Alaji as well as Mr. Puyane. Welcome. Your Excellencies, what a delightful conference we've had, in just completely stimulating, listening to some of the most incredible insights and wisdoms, and of course, highlighting the opportunities, the challenges, and I guess we keep on talking about a lot of these, but I wonder if we can finally find some solutions to those. We are going to be starting our presidential panel. And of course, this is one of the final discussions we're going to be having, and we're going to be drawing on our leadership to perhaps offer some of those insights. Our topic is defining Africa's role on the global stage. I'd like for all of you to prepare your headsets for translation, and I'd like to now ask all of you to help me welcome our distinguished guests and their excellencies from Rwanda, Mozambique, and Kenya. Your Excellency, the President of Rwanda, Paul Kagame, please join me on stage, sir. middle, yes. There we go. President of Kenya, William Ruto, nice to see you again, sir. And of course, the President of Mozambique, Filipe Nyusi. Welcome, sir. Lovely to see you. Thank you so much to all of you. Take a seat. We're going to be asking some tough questions. I hope you are ready and finding some solutions. You know, over the last couple of days, I've been listening intently on the conversations that we've been having. And one of the key themes that have really been coming through, leadership, governance, and I think those have been reiterated by Alaji as well as by Mr. Poyane. Leadership, governance, and trying to actually figure out a way to finally create policy continuity. We're talking about being at the global table as opposed to the menu, but I think it's time that we have a little bit of introspection and ask ourselves where we stand on our table. Where do we rate ourselves? How do we rate our leadership in Africa? How do we rate our own leadership in our respective countries? President Kagame, I'd like to start off with you, sir.
Well, first of all, I'm very happy to join my brothers, colleagues on the stage and thank the CEO forum organizers and for inviting us to be here, and also to thank them for many of the topical issues that they have enabled us to discuss. So straight to the point, and the question you've raised. We don't need to keep rating each other or others and so on and so forth, but we just have to focus and deal with the problems at hand. Every one of us, whether on the stage, the heads of state, or in the audience, the other leaders and business leaders and others from outside, know there are problems that we have to tackle on our African continent. There are many problems across the world. Every continent, every country have their own problems to deal with, but we are talking about Africa now. First, Africa is not a monolith. We have many countries, we have regions, we have relations among ourselves, different countries and regions and the whole continent relate with other parts of the world in many different ways and benefit each other. But specifically for Africa, there is a history that we can learn from. A history that has deprived Africa of so many things, exploited resources of our continent, and the resources benefits went outside rather than benefiting the people of our continent. That's fine. In my view, this should be something we can and should have learned from. What we can do among ourselves, with others, and that can benefit all of us. As they normally and frequently talk about win-win situation. There are things, relationships, working together wins. So then with all this, we need to therefore avoid having suffered in our history in the past and different tragedies, and we need to leave behind us, far behind us, the sense of victimhood. We can't be trapped in that we are victims of the past and so on and so forth. So we just need to seize the moment, because we really have everything that should do us proud. whether it is the resources, natural resources, or human capital, or all kinds of things. So having said all that, we see problems everywhere, also in different parts of our continent. And there is poverty that shouldn't be here after so many decades, after this tragic history I was talking about in different parts. Yeah. And if we look at ourselves in comparison with other parts of the world, there are certain African countries or regions that were better off than other countries on other continents, let's say 50 years ago. And now what has happened on our continent, there has been either stagnation or reversal of the gains we should have been making or had made. And these countries that were so much behind us are hundreds of times better than us. So there is a question you must answer, certainly.
That comes down to leadership, though, doesn't it?
It does.
It does.
It does. I was just telling this story so that I talk about leadership in conclusion. I was giving a background. So what is lacking, therefore? What is it? Indeed, there is that leadership. There is that unity around the purpose. There is, taking the opportunity that is before us and translating it into the aspirations, the needs of what people are capable of in the first place. So this requires leadership, it requires governance, it requires accountability, it requires assessing and challenging ourselves and, holding ourselves accountable in case you expected something out of your effort and it is not there. We should be able to say why. So leadership is about, therefore, the management of all these processes and getting the outcome you want, you had intended to get, or you had designed to get. So leadership is not just something in abstract. In the end, and it's not just a theory. In the end, it must give you something that is tangible, that you can see, that you can touch, that you can feel, and even put in numbers. Yeah. So on our continent, we still have a lot of work to do. And it doesn't serve us well that we blame each other or we point fingers. But no, the fact is for us being able to simply seize the moment and to do what we ought to do to deliver for our people and therefore the whole continent.
Brilliant, Mr. President. Seizing the moment as part of that, it sort of reminds me of the story that Alaji was saying about, the change of goalposts. They suddenly change the goalposts and you're trying to strike and things have changed again. And as to what President Kagame was talking about having that strong voice, the leadership that we need, is it about having a unified African voice? We're a big continent, very diverse. Do we need that unified voice? President Kagame was leading reforms at the AU. You've now taken on that role. Is it the AU? Is it another institution? Is it individual countries? Is it regional bodies?
Thank you. Thank you very much, and thank you very much for inviting me to this forum. I got a letter from my brother, President Kagame, and I'm very happy to be here. I think it's a combination. I think leadership starts from where you are, starts from your family, all the way. So let me say this, and I quite agree with what President Kagame has said. It boils down to leadership. China, 30, 35 years ago, was not where it is today. In 35 years, today China is the second largest economy in the world. It's because of leadership, it's because of decision making. And leadership is about decision making. Leading is about making the right decisions. And always, I am challenged because when I make right decisions, people always tell me, you know, you have to think about your re-election.
And do you?
You know,
Does that,
and
do you take that into consideration?
I keep reminding them that I was not elected to be re-elected. I was elected to transform the country.
Okay, let me ask you this.
You know, I remember when I speak in some fora, and people come and whisper to me, oh, you know, don't say too much because you see, you know, these people might get annoyed with you, and you know, I'm asking myself, it's not in my place to say what people want to hear or what is popular. Yeah. It is my position to say what is right. And you know, what is right is not necessarily popular.
Yes.
And it is the conversation.
That's very important.
It is the conversation we're having in Kenya, you know. Let me give you two examples. Yeah. When I came into office, I told the people of Kenya, our savings as a percentage of GDP is around 10, 11%. Other countries are in the region of 40, 50. China is at 55% percentage of saving. We were saving 200 shillings every month, every Kenyan, in our National Social Security Fund. I said we must change this. We changed it. Now every Kenyan pays 6% of their salary. Their employer pays 6% of their of an equivalent into our savings. And I promise you, what is happening now is that our Social Security Fund, which is about 320 billion Kenya shillings now, we are going to double it, and we have saved that 320 in 60 years. But we are going to double it in 4 years because of the decision we have made.
You've had to take tough decisions.
Let me tell you one more thing.
Okay.
We agreed with the people of Kenya that housing is a problem. We have 7 million Kenyans living in slums. We have 1,410 slums in Kenya. People living in squalor, without water, without electricity, without anything. And I said, we must have a paradigm shift. Everybody agrees that we need to invest in housing. In fact, let me tell you this. Both the manifesto of the party I lead and the manifesto of my challenger, both of them had housing. But when it came to implementation, the uproar was unbelievable. But I said, people, we had this in our manifestos. We're going to implement. Let me tell you the good news. We have now 120,000 housing units under construction in Kenya. It is my intention to get 1 million Kenyans homeowners in the next 5 years. That is a function of decision making. That's a function of leadership. And finally, my brother Paul Kagame has done a wonderful job on the reform of the AU. He handed over his notes to me. I intend not to let down my brother. This AU, we are going to reform it. And we are going to make AU a fit-for-purpose organization so that we can sort out the things Ali Dangote is talking about, so that we can have clarity in where we want to go. We can get the Africa Continental Free Trade Area moving and being a reality so that our business people can trade across this continent, so that we can move across this continent. President Kagame has removed visa for people coming to Kenya, for people coming to Rwanda. I have done the same. And I like what I heard from my good brother from Kenya. He said in Nigeria, they pay $230 US. Yeah. You pay ATA only $30 and you pay it online. You don't have to go to no office. So this is the situation we are faced with, and I want to say that we are going to change our continent ourselves, not others.
Brilliant. Okay, I have follow-ups on the tax regime, but I want to also ask President Nyusi a few questions, but it's coming. I need to ask about the popularity of these tax reforms and whether you can still create a hustler economy. President Nyusi, great to have you with us. Welcome. You know, listening to the question on leadership, and I want you to tell me about what your thoughts are. We spoke about that united African voice. You domestically, and we heard from Mr. Puyana as well, in terms of what you're dealing with in the northern parts of Mozambique. You've got security issues. That was one of the big concerns. Leadership is important. In Mozambique. We actually did a fantastic story about the port of Mozambique, where you're seeing incredible growth coming through. It's almost like a tale of two worlds in your country. Could you tell us, what are your priorities right now? What are you concerned about? Security?
Ellen, thank you very much. But to make sure that this is African CEO Forum, I will do it in Portuguese.
I understand, I'm ready. Thank you, sir.
Bom, primeiro quero agradecer o meu irmão e amigo presidente Kagame, que fez esse convite para nós estarmos aqui, mas dizer de facto que o debate presidencial é mais difícil do que o anterior. Que era mais sobre...
We have an issue, and I think mine is also broken. Could someone assist, please?
We are good. We can proceed.
We're having technological hiccup.
Thank you. Estava eu a dizer que o debate presidencial é mais difícil por ser político.
Yes, I was talking about different aspects, such as economical aspects that are more concrete. There's been colleagues who have spoken about leadership, the necessity to have leadership. And I was kind enough to listen to the voices of my brothers. And we also asked so many questions. But I think it's very important for us to bear that philosophy, a philosophy that says that we don't want to see the African continent always on the negative side. We need to see the African continent in a good image in terms of dynamism. That is a continent that is open. We know that the continent has gone through so much in terms of colonialism. So this is what we need to take into account in order to move forward. And we understand that what we are doing is good for us. Now, concerning the question related to security in my country, there's been quite a number of efforts together with my brother, His Excellency Paul Kagame, and we discussed on issues related to security. These are crucial points. Security is very important. We need also to have food security. We need to have access to energy, education, and food. So we've put in place so many aspects in terms of security. In Mozambique, in the northern part of the country, where we have looking at exploring mining resources such as hydrocarbons, etc. It is true we've gone through terrorism threats, terrorism occurrences in 2021. For example, we encountered so many challenges, and we put in place micro projects in those areas. We were supposed to start. And then in terms of national security, thanks to the support of my brother from Rwanda, it was an opportunity for me to thank the people of Rwanda for showing solidarity. And I believe that pretty soon we'll be able to foster our cooperation. So today we found ourselves in a situation where we are fighting terrorism, not only us as Mozambique, but as a country that is all African countries. We've been able to contain the threat situation, and it was way better than what we went through in 2021. And I'm very happy because in Africa, terrorism still remains a threat. And thanks to the work that we are doing, we've been able to put an end. So I believe that the good weapon today is dialogue. We need to foster dialogue. And thanks to dialogue, I personally had the opportunity to go to the forest to dialogue with the enemies because I knew what was happening and I knew what they wanted. So we were able to discuss and then we agreed on some points. So the situation is quite better now.
And force majeure at the moment. To what extent is this having an impact on the perceptions of risk towards Mozambique? I think that's really important because you want to lure in the private sector, but you're dealing with this security issue.
Bom, primeiro, esta é uma oportunidade que
Yes, indeed. What we want is to, concerning Mozambique, on Wednesday there was a forum which was held together with the private sector, not only from Mozambicans, but also partners who came in to visit the country. The current situation is stable. It's just a minor part of the north which is still under threat, but investment have never been stopped. So it means that the level of risk in Mozambique is non-existent. Now, in terms of investment in Mozambique, in sectors such as power, infrastructure, energy, and we are building ports. We have 3 ports so far that can have major shipping lines to do the work. And there are so many people who have visited Mozambique, they can witness. So we made a call, a virtual call, and then we were able to discuss. There's been so many investments. Now, concerning risks, there's a specific chapter that we need to talk about, which we spoke about yesterday, that is energy. And so many times we tend to neglect problems, basic problems. But these are problems that can pose a lot of challenges to us. It is important for us to consider our children who don't have access to food, to education. In Mozambique, we have a program which is called a presidential initiative. It is called Education for All. So this is what really helped us to reach 52% in terms of progress. We don't use fossil fuel. We rather use solar energy. So risks are a fact. If we are not able to solve those problems, we will definitely face risks. So we are ready to move forward into production as well. Thank you.
Security, obviously top of mind, I guess, for so many African leaders looking very closely at what's happening at borders. But I want to talk about perception of risk towards Africa and whether it's warranted. You know, these are stories that we cover a lot. And we talk about, you know, the very high cost of capital towards the continent. Some of the excuses are because of security issues. Some of the excuses, I mean, really, they're far and wide, unbankable projects and so forth. You've been able to really create some great partnerships of late. And I'm wondering what the international sphere is asking when they come here before they sign. And how do you ensure that you don't sign bad deals? Because we sign bad deals.
Right. The risk profile for Africa is deliberately exaggerated. Yes. To benefit those who, anyway, dictate the way things go.
Want favorable deals for themselves, basically.
Absolutely. So we have to be clear about that. And this fits into some of the topics that were discussed here when we were talking about whether Africa is at the table or is on the menu. And I think many times it is both. Because even when some people are at the table, they think they have raised their level, but actually they don't realize that at some point, whenever somebody decides that they be eaten up on the menu, that will happen. So, but we should be very conscious of that, and therefore not deceive ourselves, but operate as people with that, coming from that background or the context of what dictates things in the world. So in our case, we have had great partnerships. And from the beginning, partnerships for development, partnerships in economic activities, in partnership for development from the outset. That was like 15, 20 years ago. We got our partners used to the fact that this is our country, these are our problems, we must address them. We appreciate partners, we appreciate support, we appreciate everything, but we don't appreciate anybody trying to replace us in our own affairs and do either to do things for us or to dictate to us what we must be doing, because we kept saying we are the masters of our own destiny.
What's the ratio of the guys coming in and wanting to dictate versus the guys coming in wanting to actually do something good?
Well, those who want to do something, we sit and discuss.
Yeah.
There's what we want, there's what they want. So we talk about how each one of us benefits from what is under transaction. So this is, it's fair for them, it's fair to us. So we make sure that that is what happens. Let me tell you a couple of things. We've done different deals in sports, in different areas. For example, I'll tell you, we have a partnership with the PSG, with Bayern Munich, with Arsenal, with... and you know, when we did that, we made sure that they benefit and we benefit. Yeah. But you could have seen, maybe you did, what was written in the papers. Saying Rwanda, how does Rwanda go for this, or they are spending money on this, they are doing that, and we had to keep explaining. So we are spending money, but we are receiving money too. So it is not just spending. The money we spend is, even when you spend, sometimes I go watch football, even in the stadiums, here or there in those countries where we have partnerships. I spend my money to buy the ticket. In fact, one of the people who dictate accused me one time when I was in London attending Arsenal game at Emirates. Said, you see, this man comes here and we give the money for support and he spends it in the stadium watching football. So I told these people, I say, you know what? I earn a salary for the work I do. So I spend my salary to go and watch football. So I didn't spend, so I told them I didn't spend their money. I spent my money, personal money from my earnings as, salary for what I do. So, but it may sound simplistic, but the moral of it is that there's always somebody somewhere wanting to dictate to you how you live your life, how you conduct every business you do for yourself or for your country, even for the country to be dictated to which direction it must take. And we have refused that. And therefore, again, talking about leadership, I'm sure there are many others who do even better things than that somewhere else in other countries. But it still comes to leaders in any level of society being able to identify the purpose and of what they want, how they must achieve it, and how, therefore, even for self-respect, we cannot have a relationship that is lacking respect. I will always respect you, but you must return respect.
It's the criticism and the hypocrisy that really is painful. You know, the criticism and the hypocrisy that we see from the West in particular, that is particularly painful to hear a lot of the time, you know. President Ruto, I want to ask you this, and you're going to the United States to meet with President Biden, the first official African state visit since 2015. The US Commerce Secretary says the US is the best partner for Africa, but there is a jostle for Africa. The US, Europe, China, Russia. Who is the best partner? What's the vibe?
The best partner is Rwanda.
No. Ruto is Africa. It's not Rwanda only, it's Africa.
Okay, even better.
I don't think I have to answer that question. It's been answered. Both by President
Outside
Kagame.
of African borders, who's the best partner?
So, in the context of what we have said here, the best partner for us is the one that accepts to have a deal that is a win-win. We must continuously, in whatever engagement, we must keep our interests at the center of our focus.
But that hasn't been the case. We win-lose. We sign up assets and commodities as collateral a lot of the time.
And
when is that going to change?
If we sign a bad deal, we must not finger point. It is up to us to make sure that we don't sign bad deals for our people. You know, and I agree with President Kagame, this mentality of victimhood, that you make a mistake and then you want to blame somebody else. Yeah. It's not right. I mean, we must say no if the answer is no. And we must be firm to say this cannot continue. In fact, that is the conversation we are currently having. We are telling our friends, our development partners, the architecture that exists, the financial architecture that exists is faulty, it is unfair, it is not right, it must be changed. When we started that conversation, it looked weird. Today, they have come to the table accepting what they did not believe in the past. Today, they agree with us that the current international financial architecture is faulty, it is unfair, it must be fixed. It is one of the conversations I'll be having with President Biden. Because the US has a lot of say on the current international financial architecture.
You're not going to like this question. What if President Trump becomes president again? He eroded the relationship with Africa.
We will have a conversation with President Trump.
Okay.
When he comes into office. If he comes into office, we are talking to the President of the United States, whoever that is.
Because it's policy consideration.
And we are saying, we are not making a policy for a moment. We want to have a conversation as a continent. And for your information, if you have followed my language, yes, it's about Kenya. But it's in the context of us being Africans. And it's a context of Africa. We will be having conversation about the Africa Growth and Opportunities Act, the AGOA, that gives us duty-free, quota-free access to the American market with our goods. That is one of the conversations I'm going to have with the Congress for the extension of AGOA so that we can leverage on that agreement to be able to create jobs in our continent, add value to our products, and have access to the American market. Among the conversations we're going to have is about peace, security, and stability. We have seen the US, we have seen Europe spend billions in Gaza, billions in Ukraine. Have you seen billions in Africa?
No, I have not.
So this is the conversation we want to have. I mean, we have issues in Eastern DRC. We have issues in Somalia. We have issues in Sudan. We believe that a proper partnership should be structured between Africa through the AU, with the US, with the EU, on how stability matters wherever that is.
And it matters
whether
for them
it is
as well.
in Africa, or it is in Gaza, or it is in Ukraine, it is about people. And there are no better people than others. We're all human beings. You know? It is, for example, the reason why Kenya is going to participate in securing Haiti, because we are a responsible global citizen. Kenya has participated in peacekeeping for the last 40 years. We have been in 49 countries, just like Rwanda have. And therefore, when called upon to support humanity, we must show up. And so does others need to show up where we are concerned.
And they have not shown up for a long time. President Kagame.
Thank you for giving me a minute to add to what President is saying, which I entirely agree with. And it's good that we have such a voices maybe being invited to the table. So they maybe represent us there very well. That's exactly what I mean. I wanted to clarify the level of hypocrisy and all kinds of stuff we have to deal with. The President mentioned the AGOA. You know, Rwanda was a beneficiary of AGOA. Not any longer. We were struck off the list of the beneficiaries. You know the reasons? Simply because we wanted to promote, develop textiles industries here to make our own garments. And by doing that and encouraging the industries to develop, we said we do not want to have second-hand clothes being dumped here in thousands of tons. Just for saying that, and later on trying to implement that, you know, they forced it upon us. They say, you must accept these second-hand clothes. And we told them no. So they say, okay, we will strike you off AGOA, which they did. We've never been returned on the list, but we never accepted second-hand clothes.
And let me tell you, if anyone's been to these second-hand markets, you'll understand why Africa has become a dumping ground for second-hand clothing, for, I don't even want to call them second-hand cars because they're not even worth being second-hand, and that affects us so badly. President Nyusi, I want you to jump in here. You know, there's so much to discuss. Who do you think the best partner is? What is Mozambique doing?
Who's the best?
The best partner to team up with. The guys that want to sign good deals. What has come across your table? And how you make sure you're not on the menu? Because you have a lot of delicious resources and raw materials to offer the world.
Tá bom. Bom, primeiro, nós estamos agora na base de win-win.
First of all, we're in a win-win partnership environment. We're trying to develop our country, to develop our resources in Mozambique. And all our friends, as they know, we still have a democracy. That policy is to make more friends in the same direction. For that, we have to be in the common ground of understanding. That is well defined. According to agreement, we are celebrate what we are looking for, the advantage of our people, and in that way, clearly, on the basis of win-win agreements we are trying to put in place, if we can be able to transform, to process our resources internally, we can avoid that issue to have less employment, and we can create more value, add more value in our own resources, and that will enable us that the value chain be more accessible, especially for agro-businesses and etc., etc. I think our partners are those ones who are winning with me. And at the same time, I can also obtain some long-hanging fruits. Politically, economically, I think that is a very different issues, but I can give you one example. We've already started in the period of a war between Ukraine. I think in Russia, we stayed with Ukraine in terms of friendship. Our interests remain the same, and we need to have this continent in the same pace. We don't need to have distraction of our sectors. We need to maintain the pace to continue within that clear spirit of collaboration. Even Mozambique partners are those ones who can come and satisfy interests of Mozambique. Thank you.
The US? The EU?
Esta pergunta é tendenciosa e manipuladora.
I'm waiting for you.
A pergunta encontra claramente a resposta.
I think the question has already an answer. Our friends are all of those who can come and provide satisfactions to our country interest.
I want, President Ruto, I have to ask you this question, the tax reform. You had to come in with very unpopular tax increases, and it really spoke to what you said, that, you know, as a president, you have to do things without really taking into consideration whether it's going to be popular or not. How do you get everyone on board with what you've done? And are you still going to deliver your promise on a hustler economy?
100%. I have my eyes on the ball. I made a commitment to the people of Kenya. I intend to keep every promise that I made. Number one, I told them that I will get 7 million Kenyans who had been blacklisted under the Credit Reference Bureau. 7 million Kenyans are out. They used to pay 1% per day. Today they pay 8% per year. That's the difference. When I came in, I said we are going to get rid of subsidizing consumption. We are going to support production. The price of maize meal was 240 when I came into office. Today, it is 100.
Brilliant.
Yep.
I'll be watching
closely. It was a big story, the cost of living. When I came into office, I promised the people of Kenya that we are going to increase our savings as a percentage of our GDP. Today, we have a plan in place. I said we're going to have 1 million homeowners. We are on course. I said we are going to have universal health coverage. We are on course. We have already passed 4 laws. We are on course. The people who had issues with what I was doing a year ago, today, they are thinking differently because they've come to appreciate that I know what I'm doing and the country is going to change.
Thank you, sir. We're watching closely. We have friends in Kenya, and I'm going to get baptized soon as Helen Kyoko, by the way.
Thank you.
President Kagame, when we talk about Africa being on the table globally, what tables do we want to be on? What voice do we want? Do we want to have a geopolitical perspective on what's happening, Russia and Ukraine? Do we want to have a voice about what's happening in Gaza? What kind of voice do we want on the global table?
Yeah, we want a voice to be able to decide matters that affect us. for ourselves, for each country, for the continent as a whole. Because so many things, you talked about the risk profile and how that translates into high costs of many things for us, and therefore stifles business, investments, and so on and so forth. So the voice we are looking for, first of all, it must be really a united voice. On our continent, we must work very hard to make sure that you can't have 1.4 billion people with no voice or scattered voices and nothing coming out of that. So we need to come together. But it is a voice about what happens to these 1.4 billion people and things that they have a say in. And they can determine for themselves where they're coming from, what they need to do, where they are going, without really being dictated to. Because even what you've just said, the geopolitics and the competition and adversarial relationships these big powers may have, sometimes coming to Africa, whether it is to one country or two or the whole continent, and telling them, like the famous thing, is, you are either with us or you are against us. And telling people to line up and support what has been determined. It's not correct, and Africa should just refuse it. So what we are talking about is being able to decide, and we don't exclude working with others. We benefit from others. We benefit from the same people who dictate things to us. There's no question about it. We want that relationship that benefits us and also that benefits them. And it must translate in many things here. You see, these African countries are very, very rich countries in terms of resources. I think it was said earlier by Rico and others and Patrick when they were here. We can't keep producing things and sending rocks containing minerals and doing things, and then some people elsewhere out of the continent refine that and process that and return these things so many times costly. Why? Why can't we do, if not the whole of it, part of it? And this doesn't exclude anyone. The same people who take our raw materials can still be part of that processing and adding value to that. So what is the issue? So this is what we are talking about. The voice we are going to have is to translate what Africa owns to its own benefit.
Yes. I'm going to try and get through as many things as possible, and we've got a lot to go through, but what do we actually need? And the industrialization part, the building value chains is important, but it got me thinking. After I spent about a week with Alaji in Nigeria, going to the refinery, going to the cement plant, and you know what I felt when I was there, apart from being absolutely proud? I realized we need brave capital. We need brave investments. We need people that are willing to put their money on the table to make it happen, and we need Africans to do it for themselves, because if that doesn't happen and we wait, it won't happen, because the world actually doesn't really want to take value chains away from their markets and make it work on the African continent. President Nyusi, I want you to jump in here on the continental free trade area, whether you're seeing an impact, whether you're optimistic about truly industrializing the continent, taking our value chains back and making it work.
Bom, o que dizia claramente o meu irmão aqui, Ruto.
What I was saying, what I was telling to my friend Ruto, is that one of the reforms at the African Union level is that we should try to make things move seamlessly across the continent. We know that we do not have a long mandate in Africa, but I think that it's possible to implement that reform, and that reform must be based on mutual trust amongst our countries. And in fact, we have also to have a look on what others are doing. Now, coming to African countries, we have to work for our mutual interest as African countries. And, you know, sometimes in Europe, there is a kind of a protectionism. That means that they produce and they protect their product. And we know also that in Africa, we still have some challenges, including infrastructure issues, but issues around the connectivity. So we have to promote connectivity. We have to build infrastructures, including railways and road infrastructures. And we must build that capacity and that possibility to promote free movement of goods and people in Africa, just like I was telling to my brother, President Kagame, that we have to work to make sure that products who are produced in Mozambique can move freely across the continent and reach Rwanda, for example, so that we can really make easy that free movement of people and goods. And what I mean in a nutshell, it is possible to have African integration, to have an integrated Africa. And now coming to SADC, in fact, we are working on also on trying to remove trade barriers, including visas. So now we have opened our borders among 8 countries in Southern Africa. And the same can be also done elsewhere in Africa. Now, after having done this, we have observed that tourism has increased significantly in the region. And it is only by so doing that we can also achieve our goals. And we have also to fight against terrorism and to improve our security settings. Because all these policies, in fact, should be helpful for Africa. Thank you very much for your kind attention. Anyway.
And I was just thinking, as President Nyusi was speaking, making sure that our borders, we're friends with our neighbors and things are okay at our borders. And actually, we can all say that's not really the case for everyone sitting here. So what does that mean in terms of true integration? And then it kind of brings me back to what we're seeing in the Sahel and West Africa and in Central Africa with coups that have risen, ECOWAS, the issues there. I mean, there's so much. To create that cohesion, we have to look inwards to fix these issues. So President Ruto, what are you doing?
It is part of the brief that was handed to me by President Kagame. How do we consolidate and integrate our market? You heard Aliko Dangote say that our intra-Africa trade is at 15, 16%. We are struggling to get market elsewhere when we are not trading enough with ourselves. Intra-European trade is at 70%. Intra-Asian trade is at 60%. Intra-African trade is at 16%.
May I be blunt? May I be blunt and say, do we like each other enough to want to trade amongst each other when we don't even have the rules to make that happen?
Precisely the point why we must fix our AU so that it has what President Kagame said, a loud voice, a clear voice, but also it speaks to the issues that affect us. To make sure that ACFTA has a meaning. If, for example, we had signed AGOA as AU and the US, there was no way Rwanda would have been penalized for refusing to bring in dead people's clothes. You know? So the essence of numbers, if we make the AU a fit-for-purpose organization, and that is our intention. The notes President Kagame handed over to me says we must do 3 things, and which I intend to persuade my colleagues for us to achieve. Number 1, to use AU for our economic diplomacy, to make sure that it speaks to having a unified market in our continent, making sure that the ACFTA works, we have the same regulations, the borders that exist stop being barriers, but instead being bridges into the next continent, into the next country. And I say this because in EAC, intra-trade between Rwanda, Kenya, Uganda, Tanzania, the EAC countries, is at 28%. It is the highest in the continent. It is the single highest regional economic bloc that has trade at that level. We intend to pull the rest of the continent in that direction, and it tells you that the 16% can actually get to 50% if we do things right. So this is the trajectory we are looking at. We are also looking at making sure that the AU deals with the challenges of infrastructure. You heard the president here talk about infrastructure. We must make the AU fit for purpose to focus on a few things, not too many things. Security and stability, economic, diplomacy, infrastructure, period. And then we make sure that it serves the continent well. It will give us voice, it will give us, it will speak for reasonable numbers, and even if we have, it will help us push against unfair trade deals, because we have the numbers to say no to the EU if we are standing as Africa. But if I'm standing as Kenya or Rwanda, they can push. Yes. But if we are standing together, we can make sure that we push our agenda properly. Let me finalize by saying, to support our private sector, even our private sector today, they are molested by financial institutions. They are told, you are investing in the wrong place. You cannot put a factory in Africa, it is risky. They are charged high interest rates. That is our responsibility. The AU must be able to fight for a fairer international financial architecture that de-risks investments in Africa and allows investors like Aliko and others who have the courage to invest in our continent to get resources at rates that make business sense for them to invest.
Agreed. And I have to apologize to Aliko Dangote, actually. When I saw all those cranes in that area on his refinery, I said, Alaji, that looks like a graveyard for cranes. And he said, no, Eleni, it's a parking lot. We're going to put that to work. So it's there, right? And the opportunities are there. And it's so exciting to see some of these projects. But, President Kagame, you're seeing, they need, like the likes of Aliko Dangote, they have to make sure they have a power plant when they, build a factory. There's so many things that need to happen. And again, I come down to the policy that we need to really make this continent shine. And I feel there's a shift. When I interview people across the continent, I feel there's a shift that we want to take control of our future. And I want to end off with you just telling us what that is going to look like, because I feel when I come to Rwanda that this is a fantastic example of how that can happen.
Yeah, I think we have to be practical, we have to be realistic as well. And we have to do with the resources we have before us, because there are enough resources. All that remains for us to make the right decisions. And that will also be reached by having this interaction. Government and business should have a level of understanding so that we benefit each other. In fact, for example, government should be able to put business-friendly policies in place. Even where there are regulations to be put in place, they have to be addressing certain business constraints so that things don't get out of hand. That is very important. And the business should also do what they know best, and that is doing business, and also benefiting the people of any country where they are taking root. So it's doable. You asked leadership, as you said, or doing the right thing requires the mind to be right as well. For example, when you said, you were talking rightly about the borders and how people, cross borders to do business from one country to another in AFCFTA. And you said, do we like each other enough? We don't even have to like each other to that level. I mean, I explained it like this. And President Ruto mentioned it. For these people who go out looking for markets, are you really looking for markets from countries that you like, or that like you for that matter? No, it's just being wrong-headed. But we need to minimize the levels of any misunderstandings or conflicts, because some of them are based on trivial things and things that can actually be addressed and corrected and should not stand in the way of business or relations of people to do business together, for people to move freely and so on and so forth. You can't create an FCFTA and then at the same time you constrain movement of people. So how is it going to be solved? FCFTA means you must allow that freedom of movement of people, of goods, of services, and so on and so forth. Otherwise, you do one thing. So we still have that problem which we must address, and we must only blame ourselves for having this kind of situation prevail in our midst. You can't blame anybody else. We can't blame outsiders. We can't blame, no. We should blame ourselves, but we should correct it, and we should just put things right the way we know how.
Big round of applause to all of you. Thank you so very much, President Kagame, President Ruto, President Nyusi. Great to have you with me. Thank you for this very honest, very dynamic panel. Round of applause, ladies and gentlemen, for our fantastic presidents. We're going to take a photo opportunity. I'd like to call Amir on stage, Makta Diop as well, to come take a quick photograph as we conclude. And then Fifi will be joining you in just a bit.
Mr. Diop, allow me to introduce you, sir, even though everyone in this room already knows you. Please just stay there for logistical purposes. Ladies and gentlemen, thank you so much. My job this afternoon is really simple. It's really to formally bring the event and what has been a fantastic 2 days essentially to a close. I think that we can agree that everything that needed to be said at this present moment in time has been said. Everything but a few last words that will be delivered by an individual representing an organization that has been instrumental and a really important partner in putting this all together. You know him, but protocol dictates that I must introduce him anyway. Mr. Makta Diop, he is the Managing Director of the International Finance Corporation. Thank you.
President Kagame, President Ruto, President Nyusi, Prime Minister of Guinea, Baouri, Prime Minister Begre, Prime Minister Alexandre Barre-Chambrier. Let me thank you and tell you how proud, honored, and pleased I am to be here today to be able to say a few words to conclude this gathering. His Excellency, it was one of the most candid debate and discussion that I've seen about our continent. You deserve a round of applause. I think that today we make a big step forward. What we heard today was not Africa can, it's Africa is. I think it was a discussion about the challenges that we are facing, the opportunities that we are facing, and the candor and courage that we need to have to address those. I would like to thank my friend Amir, the CEO for the forum. Please, a round of applause to Amir. It's been a 12-year journey, and I think that we made progress, but we should not sit on our laurels because we have hard work to do, a lot of things to do before us. We are very proud and would like to thank President Kagame for his hospitality, for bringing us together, for inviting his peers, to invite the private sector. What did we hear in the discussion? Victimhood, seize the moment, tangible, first to be leaders, and making the right decisions. Those words resonate for all of us, because all this is difficult to do. But all this will be what will be taking us forward as a continent. We talk about result, about tangible thing to touch. It means food security, it means electricity for people, it means be part of the digital revolution, it's artificial intelligence, it's trade, is access to finance, is a just world. This is what leadership will lead us to. But this forum was not only about discussion, it was about action. I was proud to see how many deals, how many conversations we had during this forum. IFC, on our side, we signed close to $1 billion of deals during this forum. But it was not only us. A lot of partners are seeing among themselves, among countries, deals. We have heard that it will be a collective effort to move forward, an effort between the private sector, the public sector, and together. Today, I asked the head of the promotion agencies to meet. There were 5 of them. We discussed what we can do together. I was impressed to see how those promotion agencies want to exchange among themselves. How much the discussions that we have today resonated among them. So we decided, as of now, to create a network of African promotion agencies, which will be meeting regularly. President Ruto, you asked us to be with you in that journey of implementing the agenda that was defined and handed to you by President Kagame. One of the things that is missing the continent is a dialogue between the private sector and the public sector at a continental level. We have a lot of discussion in countries, but there are very few places where the leadership, the political leadership, meets the private sector leadership in the continent and discuss to address the issues that Adiko has been mentioning. So we would like, at the next gathering here, to have a forum where this discussion will be discussed. And if African Union can help setting it, the CEO Forum, my friend Amir and I are committed in helping making it happen. Without it, there will not be African free trade continental agreement. It will just be words, it will not be intention, it will not be actions. So we need to make it happen, and you can count on us for it to do it. I will today just to say thank you. Thank you for taking the dialogue between the public sector and the private sector at another level. And I think that we cannot go back. You cannot go back. This CEO forum had been a landmark because it allows us to have a candid, honest debate. It's not about victimhood, it's about taking responsibility and accountability. That accountability is not only the leaders who are sitting in front of us. The accountability is each of us. And each of us has to know that he's accountable for something. And I think that if we live with that motto, our continent can move and will move faster. So we invite you next year in Abidjan to have that conversation, but that conversation will come with a list of things that we're committed to do together and how we are accountable to do that. President Kagame, President Ruto, President Nyusi, you can count on us to be your partners in that effort. Thank you very much.
Ladies and gentlemen, it is officially time for us to now close the curtains on what has been a successful event. You're already rising, but those of you who are not, can you kindly rise as we do bid farewell to our wonderful heads of state who have given us their time and commitment. I do wish you all safe travels back to your respective countries, and until next time we meet, it's goodbye.